male disease. It's the lone male hero approach,
Right.
right? That's another
Right.
lie we're taught.
Right.
I've got to do it all alone, right?
Right.
And that's killing us.
Big time.
Fucking killing us.
That's the first myth we do. Is the water of life for them to get off their horse and admit they don't know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first myth we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
I want to make sure we get a picture, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Shelton, please
Yes.
tell us your name and your organizational affiliation.
Well, I'm Kwabena Terrence Shelton. I like Kwabena or Terrence is either fine. I mean, Kwabena or Shelton is either
Please
fine.
spell it
Kwabena, and Terrence Shelton. Yep. And Kwabena means I was born on a Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Terrence is Terrence?
Correct.
Okay.
And Shelton, Shelton.
Great. And affiliation?
And I'm one of facilitators and really looking forward to contributing on the academic side. To Alchemy Inc., yes.
Okay. The academic side. So say more about that, what you specifically do.
Well, right now, a lot of our students are, challenged in their academics, and we don't really press them hard about how they write. We just want them to write. And, but we know that, if the expectation is for them to go to college, then there's got to be some things they have to do along the way to make them prepared. And we can't leave that to chance. We got to provide those support systems, those structures in place so that as they're moving from, when we start with them at 6th grade, all the way through high school, that they're ready. They're not just ready mentally and emotionally, but they have the academic readiness as well. So my hope is to get them to be excited about the whole idea of academics. It's not just an exercise that they have to do to get through, but it's something that they have to do to get to. And when you really understand who you are and what your purpose is and why you're here, then it really helps tie you to making more strategic, purposeful steps in accomplishing that. Yeah.
Beautiful. And tell us too, as these men did, how and when and where you were initiated.
Well, I was initiated in Akron, Ohio in '93 with Kwame Scruggs, and it was about 14 of us all together, 7 men and 7 women, which was a kind of unique rights piece at that time in the country, because most rights pieces were really either all male or they were all female or they were only working with youth. But our group really was focused on working with the family. And that's really where, to me, the rubber meets the road, including the family in the process, because when you pull individuals out from the family, it disconnects the family. And so now it sets up, diametrically opposed polarities right there in the home, which, goes against what rights, to me, is really all about. So with our group, we really had a very strong group of individuals who were really committed to community. They were committed to family. They were working in the community and had some sense of wanting to do more and establish themselves. And for me, it was a time in my life when I was going through my divorce. I was going through a career change. And it was just probably the thing that I needed to help ground me into myself, lock me into my purpose, and then allow me to become more of the person that I was designed to be, as opposed to being somebody, pleasing somebody else. It was just the right timing. I had small children, so I was able to incorporate them into the process, and it was just very helpful. Even though the divorce continued, it allowed me to continue to pour certain concepts that they're now pouring into their children. So, it just put me on path towards purpose, and I think that's what Rites is supposed to do. It aligns you up with purpose, and then it places you in the proper construct of where you are developmentally. Because as we know, one of the things that Joseph Pierce talks about is the different developmental stages that we all go through in Rites. So understanding what that was for myself and understanding who those enemies and the helpers are for me in this particular stage and where I'm going to be going in my next stage and how many stages I have before I'm out of here. And, it kind of helps give me more direction and purpose into, what I'm supposed to be doing and spending time doing some things and not spending as much time doing those things that weren't helpful to that purpose. So
I want to circle back to that. So your family was with you? I mean, you actually had your parents and your siblings going through the process?
no. I went through it apart from my family. By that, when I say my daughters, okay, I had young daughters, and once I had gone through, the initiation process for myself, then I included them because again, we had a family dynamic with our rites. So we had a component with our youth. We met with them 3 times out of the, once a week, but 3 times out of a month. And we used 1 week to just work with parents. And so we would include them in the process. What we taught the students, we incorporated to the parents and share with them so they wouldn't be, unaware of what was going on with their youth when they were with us. And
you're talking about when you went through, though, that this happened, or you're talking about what you guys do now?
When I went through, and then what was implemented after the process. Okay. Because I understand it to be now a process more so than program. I look at it as process, not a program. So, because of how we went through our initiation, the 14 of us, we created a community rights that was allowing us to work with families. I guess that's kind of how I meant it. And then in terms of working with those families, there was some work with smaller children, some work with high schoolers, some work with just the adults, some continued to work with training other adults. So that's kind of like how we created our system of community, because we didn't really have one, and most communities don't have one, a community-wide rights. And so now, working with some of the folks in the city now, we're looking, okay, how do we make community out of a disconnected group of people who are living on various sides of town that are doing various different things. And so we've been really diligently working now to say, okay, we're going to be gone here soon. So how do we transfer this knowledge to the young adults who are working within the community now? How do we give that away? And we've done some of the same kind of work with Alchemy now. We say, okay, we're not going to be here forever. So how do we transfer this information in a way that is systematic, it's institutional, and that it can continue long after we're gone? And if we don't think that way, then it dies with us. So.
Yeah. That sounds so wonderful, partly because, I talked about some of the different fault lines in this community. Another one is around sort of program versus community, if you will. And some say, and rightly so, that you can risk doing more harm for a young person by putting them through a program, taking them out of their community, bringing them into the fullness, the greatness of who they are, and then putting them back in where nobody has a fucking clue of what they've just been through. Right. And so what sounds like you're thinking through is how to deal with that.
Exactly. And so for giving an example, like, those of us who who are still alive, I guess, I want to throw that in there because a lot of us are gone. But those of us who are still alive, we say, okay, as a community of elders, we've been challenged by the young people who were young like us at one time, trying to make sense out of this. And they say, okay, where are you guys, and how do we connect with you all? They don't understand how to, respect the elders. They don't know, we were taught to stand up. We were taught to ask for permission to speak. We were taught to do some very value-centered kinds of things that a lot of our young people have no clue of, and we don't hold them accountable for. So we're looking at now, just in terms of Akron as a community, how do we make it, instead of just a West Side thing, to make it a citywide thing? And so what we're doing now is to say, okay, there's these systems that are necessary for a community to exist in, and these systems, they incorporate culture, and they have family values, and they have politics, and they have a lot of different things that incorporate what these values are that make for a good community. And then there's these mechanisms by which we operate these systems in. And so what are these mechanisms? Well, for us, we just created maybe, say, 3. There's a mechanism of, the Council of Elders, who's responsible for the ongoing training of rights-based concepts and principles, and so forth. And then there's this group we have in Akron called the Akron African American Cultural Association. So that group, we say, okay, we'll use that group because it's been around for 30 years. It has a 501c3, so it has the ability to assist in getting funding and things like that. We'll use that as the mechanism by which programming can come out of, whether it's economic programming, whether it's political programming, whether it's, rights-based programming, or whatever. And then we have this think tank that's comprised of these people in the community who all they do is come up with the ideals and the research and the best practices of what works. We pull from the elders, we pull from the Culture Association, we pull from out of these people who are involved in these systems as experts, and their whole goal is just to give us the best practice in the thinking, so that and they share that with those two groups, and as a result of that, now we have a training institution that provides people with the training to go back into the community to do specific work. We have a cultural association that has the places where these people now can operate, once they get the training and be directed to, and it continues to move on. And so when we look at rights as a process, as an institution now, you say it has to be something that's ongoing. So when we're working with our young people, for example, as you're going through high school, they don't understand that they're moving through developmental stages, that they're matriculating through a developmental stage, and there's certain things that are expected of you at each developmental stage so that you will be prepared for that next one. Then you're going to go in there unprepared, and you said earlier about being stuck. We look at it as they're being stuck in a previous passage trying to make functional the intent of nature, because we teach that rites, from a technical definition, is rituals developed to aid the initiate through the various stages in his or her life to ensure a successful transition into a new life situation, or to ensure a successful transition out of a disturbing life crisis. So what are these rituals that you do? Some of them are secret, some of them are sacred. So when we try to capture it, some of it you just can't because it's done in initiation. Some of it you can share because it's something that most families have, some families have anyway, that they can just kind of pass along. So when we look at it again being a rights, when I look at it being something transformative, and it has to be processed, it has to be institutional, it has to be systems, and it has to incorporate rituals and culture. And so depending on what culture, who you are, what your family or your cultural background is, I think you have to incorporate those things, or it won't give that person a sense of self that's beyond them. They'll take on other senses of self and then lose the whole concept of what rights is all about. So.
Yeah, I want to, I'm thinking about the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, which is a kind of a rite of passage for teen boys that exists here in the Bay Area. The guy who founded that decided, you know what, I need to initiate the parents too.
For sure.
So he now has a parallel weekend. Yeah. So when the boys are off in the mountains with the men, he does a parallel weekend with the parents of those boys, and he says, here's what you need to understand about the changes your son is now going through, and how to treat him differently when he comes back. Right. And so, and that to me is a huge piece about the community infrastructure that's missing. Right. So talk about that, what you do to specifically initiate or at least educate parents as to how they need to deal with their young people differently.
Well, from one perspective, as it relates to alchemy, I think that one of the things that we are looking to try to do is at least give them a sense of an understanding of who we are and what we're all about from a bigger picture. Okay.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but my questions won't be used in this at all.
Okay.
So if you could say who the them is you're talking about.
Okay. I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. So you were just saying that. Just starting. Sorry.
From alchemy's perspective, we've been talking about incorporating parents in the beginning of at the beginning, maybe working with them at least twice a year to give them a sense of who alchemy is and what we're all about. That's on one hand. It also connects them to us and gives them a sense of responsibility that, we know that you're allowing us to work with your sons, but we can't be as successful without you. Whatever that is, whatever your role is as a parent. Now, they share with us things that we tell them that we're going to hold in confidence unless it's something that's life-threatening and things like that. Of course, we're obligated to talk to the proper, people about those kind of things. But we have to incorporate them and make them a part of the process because they're responsible. They're not our children. They are our children because they're part of our community, but they're not our children because we don't have the responsibility of raising them and they don't live with us. But if we don't pull the parents in to let them see that they are part of a bigger picture too, and that it's not just them against the world, it's them and the world, and we're sharing and helping you to raise your child to be what it is that they've purposed to be. And here's some of the things that you may not know, because in Rites, adolescence, one of the helpers in the Rites concept, as we've learned it, is that at adolescence, your coaches, your mentors, your community leaders, these people are the ones who now provide your son or your daughter, if you have daughters, with the content that's necessary for them to make that transition into adulthood. Okay, and we know that there's, these different developmental stages. So at adolescence, the next developmental stage would be adulthood. So there's things that you should know now that should be preparing you for adulthood. Now, your parents, Rites have these matrices, right? There's, in these matrices, you're talking about where you find your energy, safety, and possibility. So at every developmental stage, you have these matrices, and at every stage, you have these phases that you're going through. One that you've left, one that you're currently in training, and then another one that you're transitioning into. So when we are working with the adolescents, our goal is to prepare them to move into the adulthood transition. We are probably the best helpers for that child in that particular developmental stage, because at this point, they want to show parents how independent of them they can be or want to be. They don't want to share with them information about what's going on in their relationship. They don't want to share with them information about, finding a job or going to college, because they don't think as parents we know that information. They're trying to move away from us. So that's why we're so important for those children at this particular age group, because they still need adults because they're children. But on the other side, they need us to tell them where they're going and how these things and what your parents are. And so it's a connection.
Well, and the parents need you to tell them.
Exactly.
Not to take it personally what's happening with their kids.
Exactly.
Sense,
and
right?
So when we, Kwame Scruggs and I, we worked a lot with the Upper Bound program. I was there for 10 years, I think. He was there for maybe 5 years. And so in that time, we had a way that they were always connected. They being the students we were always connected to the parents and the students. We did workshops with both, and we made sure that they moved together. One of the things I would talk to them about as they were going to high school into college is that, you can't just leave that choice up to them. To some degree, you want them to go where they want to go, because if they go where you send them, yes, your money, but if they go where you send them, for example, then when they don't succeed because they don't want to be there, they're going to blame you. I told you I didn't want to be there in the first place. So you're the reason. So, so those little things, you got to connect the family. You have to work together. And if we don't let them know that we're extensions of you, if they don't see that our values are values that they have, then they won't allow that trust to continue to build between us. And then the students then at that point are able to manipulate the adult world because we're not together,
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, it's a reminder to me that how essential it is that the whole culture shift in order to support the parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because, frankly, it's a rite of passage for them when their children leave home.
Right.
And when they really start to emerge and flower as unique individuals.
Right.
The parents have to be supported by the community too to cut that second umbilical cord.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because their primary job has been to keep the young person safe.
Right.
All their life, right? And
right.
now they don't have that job anymore.
Right. Right.
They have to stand on their own and make safety for themselves.
Right.
So so I'm always interested in sort of what thinking goes on in groups like yours about how they're supporting the parents and those adults in cutting that cord and understanding what's going on.
Yeah, and again, I'm probably the newest addition to the Alchemy team. And this is the thing that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about the schools. I'm passionate about incorporating that rights pieces in there. I'm passionate about the process. And what we fail, I think, a lot of times as community people to realize is that rights don't stop with children. We are all going through developmental stages, whether it's going from pre-adolescence to adolescence, whether it's going from adolescence to adulthood, from adulthood to midlife, from midlife to elder, from elder to the transition to the spirit world. We're all transitioning, and there's rights that are necessary for each of us. And so we don't stop. We're always in this process. So as parents, you think that now that I'm a parent, you're done, but you're not. There's got to be a system in the community in place that allows parents to continue to go through various initiations through their stages of development. That's what rights is. And so if we don't set that up, then we're going to have a community being taken over by politicians, by other people who have economic, motives behind what they're doing. And now it's a whole nother ball game that we're involved in, and community now becomes a profit. And it benefits you from not being involved in something like rights, because we can now profit off of you, whether it's through prisons, whether it's through some economic support programs, whatever, So, we're fighting some very challenging dynamics that are all systemic. And, so I get into a lot of conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. So talking about going off, please. Because I get go down that road and I can't come back.
That, though, about life has many different passages.
Yeah.
And absolutely one of the key markers to define that young adulthood from middle age is the children.
Right.
Is letting go of the children.
Right.
I mean, because it's, or maybe even having children if you don't even have them until you're in your midlife. But,
right.
But at any rate.
Which is being pushed. If you see what's going on, a lot of people are being pushed to marry later, to have children later, because the later you have children, the more you can contribute into this economic society. There's a debt that has to be paid back, and somebody's got to pay it, So, again, that's a whole nother conversation, but the reality of it is that it benefits some to not have rights-based concepts and systems inside communities, because now the communities have more power when you have the people in the communities have more power over their lives when they are together.
Amen. Yeah. Let me just look at my notes here and see what we haven't covered yet. Let's see, what's the best way to approach this? Partly this is a question about sort of decriminalizing youthful behavior,
okay.
which is so needed. But it's also about, it's interesting because, our communities, the way that they're set up now is to deal with emergencies. Basically.
Okay.
So, when there are emergencies, then the community sort of comes out and people come together and they support each other.
Right.
How can we, as communities, be more proactive rather than reactive?
Well, to me, you go back to the definition. We're talking about community, and there's two words in there. You've got common and unity. Where's the common unity in community? So we don't really have communities anymore. We have people who live in the same region. So we now have to go back to, in my thinking, we have to go back to create communities and neighborhoods. Because when I was growing up, I guess within a 5-mile radius, those families knew who I was. They knew my parents. They had whooping rights and the whole 9 yards. And so today, if at all, we might know our neighbor. We might know them, and that's the challenge. We have to rebuild community again by building trust and making these relationship connections so that people will feel safe with each other again, you know. And it's very simple. We do the basics, go back to the basics, you know, taking the sugar to your next door and say, hey, I'm here, I've been around here for a while, blah, blah, blah. If you need anything, call us, you know. Just for example, my neighbor, she's new, older lady, and we know she walks her dog all the time. Well, we noticed that she wasn't walking her dog, and so another person who come to visit her was worried, so she called the police. They ended up having to go in and found her. You know, she was alive, but she was unconscious. She was in a coma. So after she got back home and everything, you know, and she's new, so she was kind of standoffish with everybody. So I saw her coming down the street, and I said, I rolled my window down. And I said, I need to get my belt out on you. And she started laughing. I said, you had everybody in the neighborhood concerned. I said, if there's, and I'm going to give you my number. I'm going to give you my mom's number. I said, anything, you need anything for anything, you call us. I said, next time I will have my belt. So she started laughing. I'm so sorry. She said, and then she told me what happened, you know. But it's that kind of thing that's necessary to make us bridge make the connections between our neighbors. We got to be neighborly, you know. We start with us, and we know what we know, so we have to share what we know. Others may not, and I don't assume anymore that people know what I know. And so if it starts with me, then that's what it has to be. So.
Well, yeah, and modeling obviously is a huge element of leadership,
right.
You know, and I get that. I mean, my wife and I do that too. You know, we go around
right.
when we move into a new place, like we did this place,
mm-hmm.
knock on our doors
mm-hmm.
of our neighbors and say, here's who we are.
Right.
You know, we want to introduce ourselves, and you know, we'll see you around, and hopefully we can, you know, be there for each other
right.
in some way.
And you know, I think another thing that challenges all, I mean, technology, I think Kwame Williams talked about earlier, technology is doing, on one hand, it has a lot of advantages, but on the other hand, it's pulling us away from being human with one another. And we played outside because we just didn't have a whole lot of TV. You know, you can't force a kid to get outside and play now. I was coming, I live close to the elementary school I attended, and I was walking home because I did a program up there, and was just talking to the kids as I was walking home. One of them was in my class, and so it was just some friends around them. So we were talking. I said, have you guys ever played softball before? And the response like blew me away because they all said, what's that? I said, y'all never played softball before? They said, no, what's that? I said, you don't know about the mitt and the ball or something you're playing on yet? I said, y'all kidding me. Right? So I'm just saying the technology, and they know the games on technology, but they don't know how to actually engage with the athletics and things like that. And it was really a sad awakening for me. So when I talk about technology being the thing that's pulling us, as another thing that's pulling us away from one another, there's got to be a way for us as adults to make people aware that that reading is really fundamental. You know, that it's important to read. And that's why I like the myths. That's why I like our work, because we, you know, the myths, we share with them these stories, and these mythological stories or the fairy tales, and we can see them engage. We can see them, their minds clicking and imagining in their own heads, you know, what the characters look like, and you know what the grass look like, and what those things look like. And so it awakens them in a whole different way. And then when we begin to talk to them about, you know, through our questions, and they begin to share their answers, it lets us inside of them in such a way that allows us to do work, the same work that we would probably do in other rights formats, just in a different way. It exposes that level of wound that those kids have, and allows them in this circle to feel safe in it, to share it, you know, and we embrace that and we make them feel welcome. So, but the technology piece, man, is really something that the parents of today are brought on that. You know, our children's generation are the children who were brought up with the, you know, the I don't know what you want to call it, but crack entered into our communities quite a bit. And so they had this whole dynamic of children that were being parents who were introducing children to the world, through that. So it caused a whole nother shift. And so now these kids who are primarily our grandchildren are that offspring, and so they're more hyper and they're less attentive, and they have TV and they don't know what rotary phones are. They grow up with cell phones out of the womb and things like that, and they have technology that allows them to get access to information that we just never even dreamed of when we were their ages. So we're dealing with a different set of kids. We're dealing with a different set of parents, and all of them don't have this structure of family to help them in their parenting and to help them in guiding their children through their various transitional developmental stages. And so, as we call it, the biological plan gets wrecked over and over and over again because there's no content that's there appropriate to help them matriculate through those stages.
I can't think of the guy's name right now, but who's a scientist who's talked about nature deprivation.
Okay.
Basically, and that the kids today, they almost all have it. There's so many implications to that, and ADD and ADHD is just one of many. Depression and so many things. But it's interesting because it reminds me too of yet another fault line, if you will, in the rites of passage community, and that's nature versus
nurture.
Not nurture, but do you have to initiate out in nature somewhere?
Okay.
Or, in fact, can you just do it anywhere? And, of course, I'm the both-and guy.
Okay,
Who cares where you do it?
Right.
As long as you bring the elders and the young people together,
right,
and they have a meaningful transformational experience.
Right.
But I would argue that even if you do it in the most urban setting, if you use like a school assembly hall or something to do your initiation, the initiation itself will connect the young people so deeply with their own internal nature that they'll make the leap of understanding how it's connected to external nature.
Right.
That this precious planet that we
Right.
live on is like them. And
Right.
they have to water it.
Right.
Now and then.
Right. Because to me, it's not so much the content of the initiation that's important. To me, what's important about initiation is that you are being initiated from something into something. And so there's the expectation of leaving something behind and moving into something new. And just like how graduations are the expectation, I'm leaving high school and I'm going into adulthood. There's an anticipation about that is made an initiation celebratory kind of a thing. So when I look at initiation, I don't see it as, it's just not the initiation itself, whether it's a sweat lodge or whether it's this or that. I see it as that person understanding that they are in a developmental stage and that they're moving from that into a new one that's going to require more challenges and more tests and more trials, but it's another developmental stage. And so there's an anticipation about being in that stage. When I, at this, we looked at 50 as being the age going into elder, right? And so there was an expectation for me going into that the work that I did as a young man, I'm leaving that. I don't want to work as hard anymore, but I do have information that I have to share with young men. I don't really necessarily want to work directly hands-on with teens and young people either. My work, I understand it as an elder, is to make sure that, number one, the young men who are coming behind us understand that this developmental stage has some things that's going to be expected of you, the wisdom, the history, the culture, the so forth, that's expected of you. For the children, the thing I like about being at this stage of my life and working with alchemy is the myths, because the myths gives them the stories, and the stories is what connects them to culture, to me, and culture is what gives them a sense of groundedness. And so I like that aspect because, we can come in there, these grandparents, have fun with them, and then give them back to their parents. They give them back to their parents. So we don't have to do all that, here, you guys work with them. Here's your follow-up assignments, blah, 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 blah. So I'm really looking forward to that kind of a transition moving forward, as particularly with alchemy and some of the other work that we do in the community.
You touched on high school graduation. In fact, Kwame did too, and it reminded me of a question I didn't ask you, but talk about, what we can do to consecrate the moments that traditional society offers us with young people in order to help nourish and enrich in their lives, to make it more meaningful, like high school graduation, like quinceañera, like, even getting your driver's license or voting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I haven't got a chance to go over a lot of this with Kwame about the academic component that I've kind of pulled together, that I'm putting together. And it's kind of like a combination of things that I've done with Upper Bound program. It's kind of the things I've done with our Kwabena Terrence, which is our community-based rights passage organization that we had years ago. And some of the things I just learned through Boy Scouts and Junior Achievement, that there's if you assign and ascribe points and levels to rewards and things like that and expectations, then the kids know what they're going after, and so they'll have a different set of energy moving in that direction. So, for example, putting together this three-phase component. One deals with purpose and mission, the rights-based kinds of things. Another thing deals with the high school graduation requirements. There's certain things they have to do to graduate, and then the college preparation. So it's kind of three components. So on the purpose side, we know that if they have if they begin to write their own personal myth, starting say 9th grade, and between 9th grade and 12th grade, they have to present that as a part of their graduation with us. That's one thing. Or if they have to do a research project that maybe interview the oldest person on both sides of their family. Because a lot of these kids, they grow up and they don't really want to deal with one side of the family. They don't know them. I don't know. Well, okay, you need to know them because that's a part of who you are. And as you get to know them, maybe you'll find out more about yourself that would help you become stronger, a stronger, more clearly defined you. Maybe adopting an elder so that you understand that, that they're human beings that have issues and stuff, and you will be this person one day. Maybe adopting a little brother from the program. So that's on the personal development side, some of those things. But with high school graduation, there's an expectation to meet a certain grade point average. There's an expectation for you to pass the state graduation requirements. There's an expectation for you to be involved in extracurricular activities. So we align all those things with things that we know that they're going to have to do and put points to them, ascribe points to them so that they can earn points for accomplishing them. And at the end, they have this history, this journal of information of things that they've done to help them say, okay, I made it through this transition, these tests, these different challenges that I needed to meet between now as a 9th grader till I graduate. It will help clearly define you're moving from that stage into your adult life, because now you have this history of information. On the college side, for example, I know that if I plan to go to college, then I at least need to know what I want to major in, or where would I like to go to school, where would I like to live during those 4 years that I'm 4 or 5 or 6 years that I'm in school. Could it be in a place that I wouldn't mind living? So just thinking that way. What about a research of your career? How about having a mentor? And I look at mentoring a little bit differently, not necessarily differently, but if I'm going to be an attorney, if my desire is to be an attorney, then I'm going to assign you to an attorney. I'm going to match you with an attorney so that you can see what attorneys do, so that as I'm mentoring you and modeling what it is that you're becoming, you are more clear on what's necessary for classes, what's, kind of associations, the kind of friends and colleagues. So as they're in high school right now, if they had certain things that they were required or expected to do that are rights-based kind of things that help them move from this transition into their adulthood, now, and they're clearly defined. We can't leave it a chance that kids are going to know what they need for this next development stage. We have to clearly define these things and say, here are some things that we know that you need when you get into this adult world, and you want to be prepared. So I think that's the big thing. We don't clearly define it for them.
Yeah, but what I'm pointing to is more, again, an adult function, which
Okay.
might be outside your comfort zone or
Okay.
whatever expertise, but about how we don't utilize the opportunities of markers where they have accomplished certain things
Mm-hmm.
to then utilize that opportunity to bring the community together and say, we now see you as a different human being because of what you've been able to accomplish, and then to honor them for that, and then also to make it clear that yes, along with this new right come these responsibilities.
Right.
And here's what they are, and make sure that they understand them.
Right. One of the things that, with that in mind, we've been working, Kwame Williams and some of the other elders in the community, we've been working to establish this construct that I talked about earlier with the systems and the mechanisms and the tools. And with that in mind, we have an annual Kwanzaa celebration that it's a citywide celebration, and different community groups take control of the day and they host it at their venue. And so we talked about using that because that's something that's expected every year, using that as the vehicle to do exactly what you're talking about. If it's people, young folks who have gone through an initiation, they're transitioning, then there's a way we introduce them to the community at that point. If there's adults that have gone through an adult training, here they are, and here's what they're going to be working on for the next however many months. So we're utilizing that venue as a way to introduce them to the community. I'm not sure if that's kind of what you're talking about, but
well, it's part of it. Yeah,
okay.
It's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, and that's great. It's interesting too because your previous answer reminded me. One of the first things I ask potential mentees is I say, well, okay, let's be clear about what this is about. Is this about professional expertise? I'm going to mentor you as a filmmaker, and you're going to acquire certain skills as a filmmaker, or is it going to be about life? And growing you into the fullest young man you can be, or both. And my preference is always both.
Okay.
Because to me the lines are very fluid between them sometimes. But to me, it has some value, but less value to sort of mentor them to be a world-class filmmaker than it is to be both a world-class filmmaker and world-class human being. That's what interests me the most. So.
And I would just say we put the aces in their places. Put the aces in their places. There's some people, yes, you would want them to have that area of expertise that's trying to get, because they want to be a filmmaker, right? And they don't know what it took for you to be a filmmaker. And in mentoring them in that regards, you're not only giving them the content, but you're also giving them the spirit behind why you do what you do, and the human side of what makes you who you are. And that's something you can't necessarily find in books. That's why you got to line them up with people. But then there's also the institution of Rites, to me, that says, here's the training institution that will give you some of those basic community life skills kinds of things that we know that everybody, that's necessary for the community itself. And there's a group of people who do that. That's what they do, right? And so, and the part of their responsibility is to make sure that they are aligned with other people that can help them and mentor them and coach them in those different areas. So.
Yeah, amen. We're about out of tape, but are there other things that we haven't addressed that you'd like to address?
No, this is good. I like to talk. I don't get a chance to talk much. Thank you very much.
You guys.
Yeah, man, this is great. Thank you.
I appreciate hearing all three of your voices. Yeah.
I will say this: I definitely appreciate your work. I got a chance to look at the website in a little bit and to get a good sense of what you're doing. So, I think this is so necessary. It's so necessary. So, I appreciate the work and even the opportunity to sit in the chair.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and you know, well, we'll talk more offline here, but you know, certainly getting you guys integrated into the Youth Passageways Network, so we can support you is going to be important. But other possibilities exist too, and you know, I would love it to come to Akron sometime and to meet your community and to like do a fundraiser with you or something where we maybe would split the door or something.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
I would love that.
Okay,
you know,
cool. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, great.
That's great.
Okay, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, so yeah, we'll just brainstorm some things.
yeah, let's definitely do that.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.